Welcome to the In My Opinion Show with Ronald Barrington Robinson and friends, seen on the internet. I want to welcome our very talented co-hosts, Miss Jackie Williams.
Hello, everyone.
And Mr. Henry Hatter.
Hi, Ron. I'm going to be nicer this time.
And I want to send a special shout out to our millions of viewers worldwide. Let's talk about, should Flint schools be given responsibility for determining the status of long-term care following lead exposure, according to a proposed ACLU lawsuit? Mr. Hatter, why don't you start off with that one?
Well, this is by the, what organization introduced this?
ACLU.
ACLU. ACLU, shame on you. There must be other things that you can do. How much more do you want to put on the education system? Teachers, schools are there to educate kids, not to take care of them. You got the Department of Health. You got hospitals. You got healthcare organizations that can do this. Although the kids are there in school and you have control of them for 6 to 7 hours, they're easily available. But what are we going to take out of that day to supplement for the time that you use to keep records on kids who have been dosed by lead? I mean, that seems to me a big job. And schools just do not have the problem. With all the discipline problems that they have, we need to have someone else step up. Maybe parents or whatever, or churches, whatever, can take that job on, but they can't be volunteers. They have to be paid. But schools just don't have the time to do that. With all of the conflicts that they have with students and stuff like that, they need to focus on educating kids. They need to focus on improving education outcomes so that our kids can compete with other kids throughout the world, throughout the state, throughout our nation. But for example, here in Flint, our kids are the worst performing kids in the ISD. And we just can't do it. Now you might bring in educators here and let them speak to that, or bring in the State Board of Education and let them speak to it. But I don't know where they're going to find the time to take care of this kind of a mandate or effort, unless ACLU would provide the funding. They can find it if someone could find the funding.
I think in this situation, I think we should put the blame or put the responsibility on the state of Michigan, all right? Because with all of their resources and their supposed experts, all right, on water quality and so forth, they dropped the ball. We ought to put also on a city of Flint, all right, for not taking care and taking care of the business like they should have, protecting the public. It shouldn't be on a lawsuit. From the ACLU. Let's get with Snyder and his crew, and let's go back to Walling and Early and the idiots downtown.
They're not educators.
I'm talking about
right.
They could have stopped. Yeah, you're right. They're not educators. I think my 15-year-old daughter could run this city better than whoever's down in, you know what I mean, in some of those departments. But that's in my opinion.
But that's a good opinion. That
I
maybe
think,
even be better than mine.
Well, actually,
but we just don't have to.
This is a scary moment for myself. I actually agree with you, Henry, and
you do
today. I actually agree with some of your points, and I think our day of school is taxed for our for our teachers, because they deal with discipline, and they're saying now the lead causes different disciplines. So there is a lot put on teachers who are underpaid. I want to make sure I say that teachers are underpaid for the job that they're set to do. And I think that if you're going to add something to educate, we need to take the responsibility back from the schools and put it back in the home and say, our city was plagued with lead. Your parents need to be educated to be able to detect, to educate their homes, to know if their kids are being affected, if they see any levels change, if they see behavior changing. Put it back on the parents, because the parents have had a pass for the last 20 years.
Thank you.
And it's not fair, because they come to school and they expect somebody to change their child into this perfect child, but you put nothing into it. Well, that's not going to work. It has to be teamwork. So it has to be the school and the parents. So put some more shift back to the parents. Give them some power. You know, let them discipline their kids within reason. Not beat your children, but discipline your children. Give them guidelines, restrictions, and then show them things that they need to be aware of. Teach them how to be parents. Because I think if we do that, then you can still have the educated day that we need to have. The kids can focus. If there's a problem, it can be determined. And then they can have special classes if they need to set that up. But I don't think that the teachers should be burdened with that. I think that should be shifted back to the parents.
And we should have a teacher on here. We should bring an administrator. You should bring a public service person in who makes the laws and talk about this. This requires more a conversation.
Right.
But you got to have the right people at the table. You can't bring idiots or dummies to the table and talk about this. You got to bring erudite people who understand children, understand the learning process, understand discipline, and understand where we want to go with educating our children to improve their ability to think.
And that's good, because
function.
that would start the conversation.
Yeah.
Because they were saying that it doesn't take much for you to point out that there's a problem.
Yeah.
But it takes way more effort for you to show a solution or work towards a solution, and that's where we need to stay. So I understand your point. Yes, we were infected with lead. Our water was not right. They knew they did it. Okay, so let's move from there and say, okay, so this is what we're doing to make sure we don't ever go back here again. So we're going to do these things, and also we're going to strengthen the education system by saying, parents, we need you to support us. We're not against you, and if teachers don't want to be teachers, we retire them. We retire teachers that are, performing poorly, because you're hurting our children and you're going to eventually hurt our economy.
Another caveat to this discussion is that the way we promote our kids today, you don't have to do much to rise, because the school district can accommodate bad behavior in the classroom. It shouldn't.
Right.
So, but you can't keep a kid there forever in the classroom. You got to move them, whether they're achieving anything or not. There's a process that moves the kids through that organization. There are many school districts that try to resist that. But if a kid is not learning, you got to figure out how to deal with that kid, because we have to educate all kids, irrespective of race, age, gender, and all of that. And that's still the mindset of educators in this country. One of these days, we'll probably separate kids who don't want to go to college, who don't want to be in school, and the kids that want to be there. And then you maximizing the dollar, or the education dollar.
But that's not, I don't think that would maximize the dollar, because iron sharpens iron. And if you put iron sharpens iron. So if I'm in a class with somebody that don't have any potential, I might rise above the classroom, but I won't be able to compete out there. You understand what I'm saying? But if I'm in a classroom with somebody who could possibly be the valedictorian, I am challenged. But if I'm in a classroom with somebody who just want to work at the gas station,
I know.
I mean, it's not fair.
That's the argument that goes on all the time in education. That's the argument. But still, there's a problem. There are resources directed away from kids who can do much better. And what the schools are right now trying to teach kids to at least achieve the minimal expectation, which is a C. Okay? That's a graphic way of looking at it. But they want to teach to the lowest level. See, kids will achieve their levels in each grade. And you would think in the old days they taught to the kids at the top levels. But now they're looking at teaching the kids at the lowest level and elevating them to the next level. And that, to me, that sounds rational. But there's a lot of...
What happens to the kid at the top? They're bored.
Well...
They draw in class.
These are really the questions that go through education all the time.
I went to kindergarten with my sister because I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
And she was mad, but I went to kindergarten with her, and I was only 3. I went to kindergarten with her. I was reading at a 4th grade level.
Now you see the complex issue with the education.
But I'm saying with the 1st grade. So
Yeah.
my point is, I would get in my class and I was bored, so I would talk.
And it's irrespective of age, race, or gender.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with that.
Right.
If you being the person that you are, and you don't look like the majority population, you look like I do. But if you were bored, now I wasn't bored. I was always trying to catch up.
So you were one of the ones at the bottom.
I was at the bottom trying to move up, but that's an interesting discussion. I'm glad that you said that so our audience will know that there are smart people among us.
Let me ask you this question. Henry, you're an educator. What formula do you what formulas do you have in mind, other than start at the bottom? Jackie said, why don't you start at the top? All right, maybe
We've done
starting
that forever.
Starting at the top, maybe
The kids
maybe the ones
at the top
bottom.
have always been privileged.
Privilege in how?
They've been privileged. Because that's what education is. It teaches to the highest degree of expectations. That's why we've had all of these mathematicians and musicians and scientists that have gone through education and contributed much. The people down here didn't contribute that much. Oh, yes, they did. You take the mechanics that brought about wagon wheels and the artisans that created them, and the ones that made these things, they were at the bottom. Those were the artisans. But the educators were the thinkers. And even until just a few years ago, people opposed the idea of school to work. Have you ever heard of school to work?
Mm-mm.
Well, in 1995, President Clinton offered $500,000 to the school districts, and it had to be apportioned, that $500 million. A portion with all the schools around the nation, to encourage teachers to teach kids who would not want to necessarily go to college, but once they graduated from high school, would want to go into the trades or something else. They wanted that to be to become part of the agenda for schools, so that all schools would follow the same pathway. Mm-hmm. And it worked well for a while, and that part of what we learned from there is still in the classroom today. But still there are kids who are being left behind because we don't have that money into the system anymore. $500 million didn't last very long. And I'll tell you what happened. Many schools, like Flint schools, they were given the money, and
Is that
a lot
like
of
the
other
skill
schools.
center?
Yeah, the Skills Center would be part of that. But what they did with the money, they didn't know that the money was not adequate or renewable. So they went out and hired teachers. And teachers become attached to the your teacher obligations to as permanent employment.
Right.
So They had a difficult job getting rid of those teachers a number of years back. You remember they had to lay all those teachers off? When they came up with this school to work program back in the 90s, they didn't say, well, money is not renewable. Schools thought that, many of them thought that money was there forever. And they were misled. And they hired people. And it hurt the school district. We did not use that in Clio because were opposed using any kind of money that's given to you without testing it to see whether it's adequate, renewable, and we will continuously receive it. But there are other school districts, like in Detroit, many of those Inkster schools and stuff like that
And
hire
so is
teachers.
that how they became upside down?
Oh, that could be, yeah. Most people think it did, but we don't. That's why school districts have got to be smarter than the government. You simply don't engage in these things that look like a real gift to you, because they could be
Every child left behind.
Children, let no child be left.
Did you guys do that one?
Yeah.
That was mandatory, right?
Yeah, that was mandatory. That was from the Bush administration.
Right.
It came out of this this doctrine that came out in 1982. Schools at risk, a nation at risk. Remember that one? So when Bush became president, in order to offer the opportunity to urban kids who were the least challenged and the low producers, every classroom had to assure that the least of the kids, the least performing kids, would do well. That's why they called it Let No Child Be Left Behind.
But it was underfunded, correct?
No, it was not underfunded. There were a lot of people who didn't like it because the Republicans offered, and that was a dumb thing.
No, I thought they said it was underfunded.
You can say that about anything, but if someone gives you, I'll give you an example. Schools that were considered excellent schools, they used it and made it work perfectly. We looked at the money and said, oh, we can't do that. The Republicans gave us that money. Or it's not for blacks. Or there's...
Is that how the dollars are analyzed?
No, it has nothing to do with it. In order...
No, I'm saying, is that
what
what school
schools-
districts, are those a question?
Now let me tell you how it worked. School districts who had mixed populations, like Flint, or like Mount Morris, or Clio, you had to have at least 30 black kids in the school room, in the school building. That's called the population. And when you have 30 kids in a class, 30 in the school, you got to assure that 30 kids are getting the same kind of response from the teacher as the white kids are, or the Asian kids are, who are the better performers, according to statistics. So and those kids had to meet an expectations of about 70%. When you look at the grade level, they had to achieve about 65 to 70%. And that's what you call proficient, okay? And our kids weren't achieving that. And nobody cares, nobody does anything about it. We just let the urban schools continue to do what they do. And we argue over race and stuff like that.
But why do you say nobody cares?
Well, apparently, take a look at it. Our school districts are still that way.
But the millages, when you guys do millages in Clio
Yeah.
versus a millage in Flint
Yeah.
versus a millage in Grand Blanc, you guys have adequate amount of money to be able to raise, to be able to fund the type of curriculum that you need to present to your students. Am I correct?
No, we don't have the money that we want. We
But I'm
get
saying
the
not that
money
you
that
want,
we
but
get.
you're closer than Flint.
Yeah, and anytime, here's the difference between Flint and other school districts around Flint, is if those districts around Flint come into a snag where they can't support a program or something, guess what?
They
They
get
drop
on
it.
Flint?
They drop it.
We don't drop it.
Yeah, I don't know. You just let the burden. You run deficits. Anytime that your building is underutilized, and if you're, for example, if your building is less than 60% utilized, it's time to consolidate the building with some other building in the district, some other site.
Is what you're saying that we lack the education on our school boards to understand?
Education on the school board, yes, that would be one thing.
Okay.
But the other thing is you didn't get the parental support. Parents need to be at the board meetings and say, this is what I want my kid to be able to do in 5 years. I want my kid to be able to
read at a certain level.
to work a computer,
Yeah.
and to be able to get on the internet, to be able to write a paper and send it to the President of the United States.
But if the parent can't be in that schoolroom,
He doesn't have to be in
that
this
class every day, how do they know that their child is getting the instructions that they need?
You can't have the parents in this classroom.
I know.
Yeah, they are.
But
No,
what I'm
you don't
saying
want
is
that.
But what I'm saying is that maybe
They'll dumb the
that's-
classroom down.
But maybe
But how
that's
do you hold them accountable is what he's saying.
Through the superintendent and through the Board of Education.
So maybe this is, a lot of times, again, education is important because a lot of young parents don't know because all they know how to do is fight, go up and yell, and that doesn't work. So maybe we need to give them tools to have a successful child. So if your child is not achieving, this is what you should do.
I'm surprised that large institutions like churches, for example, they have a lot of power, a lot of influence, lots of money. They have a lot of will. And yet, they have never been approached the school board and say, this is what, and we're going to hold you accountable. This is what we want our kids to do, be able to do in 5 years.
Because I thought,
they're now in
I
sixth
thought you
grade.
can't mix church and state.
You can't.
But I'm saying
but
because
still,
remember there was a new thing
I know,
that Bush came up with that we
Yeah.
could not
No,
interfere.
you can't do that.
Right.
That's the.
Okay, so
privacy
you
guard.
just hit me twice. So what power would you have if I can't? We can't.
Well, you don't have to go as a church.
But you just can go as a community. is
Go
what you're
as a
saying.
community of the church.
Okay.
Because those people, you can't use church dollars and commingle them with school dollars.
Right. Right.
But people in churches do congregate together, and they are a formidable influence in the community. They ought to be there asking the Board of Education, and they should decide what the mission of the board should be, and then they should take it to the board, and the board will take and decide on that. They don't have to take anything that you recommend. But as long as the community doesn't care, the board will give penance to its effort. Just sit there and let things happen. But you got to drive that process.
That's some good information.
Well, yeah, you got to drive
Because,
the process.
a lot of times you think that you go to the school and that's it. Well,
Yeah.
I was very active when my kids were in
Well, I just sometimes ask them, okay, I would like to have my kid be able to write a 100-word document to the president. I want it in 4 paragraphs, and I want all of the words to match and name, number, and person. Okay? Verb, person. And I want that to be accountable. And I want to see it. And you should post these along the wall so parents can go in and see how teachers have evaluated the kids. And then you check this. You have a baseline. This year you're going to start it. And you follow that baseline as we ramp ourselves up. As we ramp ourselves up. And to see how our kids improve over the 5 years. Then you can tell whether you're making progress with the kids. Otherwise, you're just idling.
Now, the reason why that's interesting to me is because they said that Genesee County is the most illiterate.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
We've known that for a long time.
So my point is, if you know we're illiterate, because I do know that we have like pop-up libraries now. Did you know that?
Yes.
Like my church is a pop-up library. You can come there and get as many books as you want, and you can have them. They'll come to your property, and there'll be libraries.
We need to have a conversation where we just let other people join us and we talk about this.
Yeah, because this is good information.
Okay. So we need to do that, and I'll be glad to work on that. That's a challenge. That's what's
No, I just think
that makes my day.
No, that makes
good.
me happy to
Yeah.
be able to work.
When we can
that
achieve
because-
something together.
Yeah, because that's growth.
Yeah.
That's interesting to know too. That's it's just
But the
valuable
key is-
information here.
You go to your board and say, you think about what you want your kids to be able to do, because the board doesn't know what you want the kids to do. And the superintendent and his staff decide on his own, and that may be specific to the population, but you got to have something more detailed for your
So
population.
in workable and successful school districts, that's what is going on.
Oh yeah, successful school district. Now give the name of some successful school districts.
But
and
the board.
also,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Also, so that you can visit them and just they'll sit down and talk to you about how they do business. They won't come here, be there to castigate blame against where you live or any other school district, but they'll say, this is how we do it. And this is what we achieve by that. This is how we're rated in the state. We're rated, Grand Blanc was rated number 5 about 15, 20 years ago.
Well, with that, we must bring this segment of the In My Opinion show to a close. Very interesting stuff. One comment real quick. These board members, I mean, if they don't, if they're not empathetic with the student body, they don't need to be on the board. But this is Ronald Barry Robinson and friends saying until next time, stay focused.